On the broadest of all scales, ageism, like all prejudice, operates to pit us against each other. There is no domain in which ageism does not affect us. Older people are not more valuable or more wise than younger people. I don't like anything that says X age is better than Y age. What we need is a mixed age workforce, obviously. I'm often asking people what they think of as criteria for diversity, and people don't often think of age, but when I say, how about age? No one says that's a dumb idea. The myth that older people don't contribute to the economy is ridiculous. We start arguing about whether the boomers wrecked everything or whether millennials are selfish, some ridiculous generational cliche, instead of figuring out how to organize, how to work together to tackle the really big problems facing the planet. So in the biggest sense, that's why I do what I do.
This is a ProBoomer BOOMcast. Information, inspiration, insight, and advice from successful thought leaders to help you launch yourself and assure the years ahead are some of your best.
Ashton Applewhite is an ageism activist. She's a speaker, having done a TED Talk among many others. She's written several books, but her most recent, This Chair Rocks, a Manifesto Against Ageism, is really having an impact globally. And if you read it, and upon watching this really compelling interview, you'll understand why. Because she's really bringing forth the reality of how ageism hurts everyone. It hurts the economy, it hurts business, it hurts health, and it really means that people aren't taking advantage of a huge resource that can help with challenges and problems, as well as to take advantage of great opportunities and progress. And it's also how the new reality in this day and age of what it means to be 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 years old, well, the stereotypes and presumptions and assumptions about it couldn't be farther from the truth. In fact, in some cases, 180 degrees away from the truth. So enough about that. Let's get on with the interview.
So, what is the point behind this? What is the takeaway for not just people of age, but everyone?
My absurdly ambitious goal is to help catalyze a grassroots movement like the women's movement that helps us understand, become more aware of ageism, understand how it works and the damage that it does, and mobilize against it between our ears and in society at large.
So with ageism, first of all, how prevalent is it today? And how much impact is it having, not just on people of age, but our economy, business?
Oh, everywhere. The data is staggering. I'm at a loss for words because there is no domain in which ageism does not affect us, and no domain in which its effects are not pernicious, individually and collectively. The myth that older people don't contribute to the economy is ridiculous. I would say age discrimination at work is where it's the first form of discrimination many white men encounter. And the first time they bump into this notion that, whoa, it's not a meritocracy, hello. And it's an ugly, awful experience that all women have already experienced, people of color have already experienced, women of color experience triply, add disability or other disadvantages to it, and it becomes a very steep mountain to climb indeed. The cost, the personal cost, the cost to our health, people don't know about it, the cost to our society because ageism segregates old and young, so it's tremendously isolating. And the biggest, the most important component of good old age is not health or wealth. It is having a strong social network. So ageism is enormously corrosive to that because it encourages segregation. On the broadest of all scales, ageism, like all prejudice, operates to pit us against each other. Whether it's the Marxist example of the factory workers, fighting amongst each other rather than organizing for a decent wage, or mothers in the paid workforce arguing with stay-at-home moms about who's a better mom, instead of organizing to close the gender wage gap so women could choose whether or not to stay home. When old and young are pitted against each other, we see in the OK Boomer meme, you know, a very quick way that this can happen. We start arguing about whether the boomers wrecked everything or whether millennials are selfish, you know, some ridiculous generational cliche, instead of figuring out how to organize, how to work together to tackle the really big problems facing the planet. So in the biggest sense, that's why I do what I do.
Let's go to the new reality, and at least I consider it a new reality, that some of the presumptions or assumptions of age are based on old notions of the way that it used to be. What is the new reality?
Well, it's funny you should say that. I'm working on a talk about ageism in the workforce. And there is actually, economists have very, very little data to show that aging societies, which is to say those with the highest rates of population aging, with the highest percentage of old people in their population, there's no evidence that they are actually economically worse off. Look at South Korea, Germany, Japan. So we don't know. And it is indeed true that most of the data, these gloomy predictions of the gray tsunami, you know, looming over our heads, and old people are going to suck all the good stuff out to sea and leave young people high and dry. I can talk about that in greater length. We're predicted on a model of aging that is way out of date. 60 is still the new 60. It's not the new 40, but it is different. Quite different from the way it was a generation ago, and way different from the way it was when our parents. We are living longer, and we are living more healthily, and also changes, you know, who does physical labor anymore, for example. So there are all sorts of you know, I am not a Pollyanna at all. Ramping up the kind of support an older population will need is indeed an enormous challenge in many ways, but I'm kind of in the both sides of the story business. We never, that gray tsunami, a friend of mine, Jeanette Liardi, who's a gerontologist, coined the phrase silver reservoir, right? There is also this unprecedented amassing of human capital, of millions more healthy, well-educated adults than ever before in human history. And that is an astonishing fact. I mean, the last time this happened was in the Paleolithic era, when humans started living long enough to become grandparents. It's called the grandmother hypothesis. That's when art happened. That's when music happened. That is when civilization started to emerge. We now have 4 and even 5 living generations. And it's new. We've never done this before. So we have an incredible window of opportunity to shape a society that is going to support people lifelong. This is not just about old people. Aging is not just something annoying your parents do or baby boomers do. It is a process we embark on the day we're born. So we really need to think about how to revamp all our institutions, retirement included, obviously, so that we are supported more. I would like to see more support for people when they have young children, more support for students. Everyone is going to become hostage, I'm guessing, I'm not an expert in that, to a heartless gig economy. Right? So we have this extraordinary window of opportunity in which to think creatively and inventively and structurally about how to shape a world of longer lives that supports us across that entire longer lifespan. I mean, I know these are really big ideas, but that is the task, and it's a really interesting one. I think it's really why you're doing what you're doing too.
Let's dive into the benefits which you've been heading toward, in terms of, yes, as you alluded to, there's this perception of with so many people reaching retirement, it's going to drop the GDP, while tax dollars to go for health and services are going to be on the increase, where everything I am seeing is that if we fully exploit how people are desiring to work longer, start new businesses, live healthy and active lives, actually contributing to the economy and to the benefit of everyone in like this multitude of ways that's almost incalculable. And yet we're shooting ourselves in the foot by not
We're stuck in an old way of thinking about it. I mean, the World Bank did come up with, and I should say, I've been writing about all this out loud, thinking out loud on my blogs, which is searchable by topic. So all the data points, I can send you a list of links for your listeners. The World Bank came up with finally a more accurate standard, a way of measuring contributions across the lifespan as an antidote to what was called the old age dependency ratio. Think about that language, which posited that the minute you hit 62 or 65 or wherever, you became economic dead weight. I mean, I'm 67. I've never worked this hard. People do tend to be, do step out of the job market, but more older people are working longer than ever before. And to link our productivity, our value as human beings, which is really what it comes down to, especially in a hyper-capitalist society, to how much money we bring home is such a limited measure. And it eliminates all the countless ways in which, as you alluded, older people can and do contribute. I mean, a very literal example is, suppose I am no longer going off to work every day, but I watch my grandchild so that their parents can go out. I am contributing to the economy. As I need more services because I can't, mow my own lawn anymore or whatever, I hire people to do that. One of the most pernicious myths is the idea that old people hang on to jobs so young people can't get a foothold. That is a fallacy called the myth of the lump of labor. The amount and nature of work is not fixed. Older and younger people seldom compete for the same job. Older people typically want to transition out to fewer hours. And if there are not enough jobs, that is a workforce, a labor market problem, not a too many old people problem. That's where ageism comes in. If we think of aging itself as nothing but bad and older people as nothing but burdens, we get sucked into this sort of one-sided way of seeing things. And again, not that the challenges aren't real, but there are 10,000, creative ways to think about how to tap into the unprecedented resource that older people also represent.
You've got a whole chapter in your book called Not Done Yet, The New Workplace Ageism. I love the quote from your TED Talk in which you said, companies aren't creative and adaptive because their employees are young. They're adaptive and creative despite it.
Well, one of the reasons I love what I do is that I'm constantly revising how I say things. And I now am not so happy with that wording because it's a little snarky and because it pits old against young. Older workers are not better than younger workers. Older people are not more valuable or more wise than younger people. I don't like anything that says X age is better than Y age. What we need is a mixed age workforce, obviously, because younger people and older people bring, in a certain, in a narrow sense, different skills to the table. And I mean, a friend of mine was saying he works in advertising, has been able to hold on to his job. He's older, and the younger people at the table tend to throw out a bunch of wacky ideas that he knows from experience. Some won't work, but they also come up with some stuff that he might not have thought of. And between them, we know data, study after study shows mixed age workforces are the most effective, especially in creative industries. Just like if there's people who have come from different ethnicities, different sexual orientations, you come up with a better decision, a better product, because it speaks to more people.
And that goes to diversity and inclusion, a major corporate trend and a good one that's not about quotas, but rather having a diverse workforce, diverse people, diverse backgrounds, not just genders, ethnicity and such, and being inclusive of that, which then is going to give you better results. Yet, and I've talked to some people in this field, they say it really is funny that the one thing you don't hear about in some people's formulas for diversity and inclusion is age.
It's nutty.
It still skews young.
Well, I mean, I am often asking people what they think of as criteria for diversity, and people don't often think of age, but when I say, how about age? No one says that's a dumb idea. No one says, let me get back to you. They smack their heads and go, why didn't I think of that? That is one of the reasons I am profoundly optimistic about the work that I do, despite the large scale goal, which is, a grassroots movement, because the ground is plowed. in a way that, for example, culturally, I mean, that it wasn't 60 years ago when you said a woman could run a huge company as well as a man, there was some head scratching on the part of women as well. When you say now, gee, why shouldn't age also be, we understand now much more about how all these forms of discrimination reinforce and compound each other. Age clearly qualifies. Age is clearly a criterion for diversity. The HR industry does big polls every year. Ageism is emerging. It is the most common form of discrimination experienced in Europe. It is emerging as the #1 form of discrimination that workers report encountering. So this awareness is growing at a very rapid speed because we're not starting from zero. We're starting from a deeper understanding of how prejudices compound and reinforce each other. I like to point out that activism is intersectional also. When you chip away at the fear and ignorance that underlies any one of these prejudices, you erode the basis for them all.
So to make a point about how this also therefore impacts businesses and economies to their own desire, these stereotypes. I was talking to a business development person in a tech area in the United States that, among other things, they run these CEO roundtables, and the #1 complaint amongst these CEOs is that they can't find enough people. They lose business because they can't find enough of the right people to hire. And yet in a few weeks, I'm going to be down there speaking to all of these incredibly advanced professionals who are over 50 years old, who are incredibly qualified, desperate and passionate to find more work, and they can't get hired.
Is the Zoom camera picking up my giant eye roll on this one? Not trying hard enough? Look harder at people who don't look like you. It's a real challenge. I have a hard time too. My audiences remain hugely white and largely female. I understand this is an enormous ask, but the people are out there. Look harder.
So let's talk about the arguments against it, which you bring up in your chapter about not done yet.
I actually, before we leave the giant economic cost, I found a statistic that I think your audience will like. Is that?
Please.
Well, the human cost of age discrimination in the workforce, the cost to companies, which we just talked about. Workers walk out of companies with massive amounts of intellectual capital in their heads, right? And that harms companies. As far as the effect on the larger economy, AARP set the cost to the US economy at $850 billion in 2018 and calculates that the amount could climb to $3.9 trillion by 2050. That's comparable to Germany's GDP.
And bring that cost down for me. That relates to a cost at what way?
Age bias in employment, the forcing out of older workers. Right? I mean, the costs are tremendous. The cost in healthcare, I think it's $58 billion. It's staggering amounts. It is especially absurd to have to say that experience is an asset, not a liability. What kind of crazy world is that, right? And there are, we understand that diversity and inclusion is important in the business world, but I think it's only 8% of D&I programs include age. That's going to change. That's going to change really soon. I mean, one of the things that I'm working on with a group, and I know other people are at work on similar endeavors, and the more the merrier, is to try and get an index for whether your employer, your place of work is actually all age friendly. Does it discriminate against older workers? And to get a certificate, a metric, so that your company will, have to pass certain metrics in order to get this certification that says, yes, workers of all ages are not being discriminated against, just like workers of all races and workers of all genders.
Now, with those stunning numbers, what is it that's missing because these workers, what are the value points of what's missing because older workers are being shown the door? And I'll throw the first one, is even just the mentoring and the teaching we all had. I had, thank God for the mentors, even just older workers that I knew in the news business or whatever, who just even through osmosis I learned from, let alone someone to help
Yeah.
guide me. That's got to be one of them.
I mean, it's obvious. It's intuitively obvious why being around people of different ages is enriching to everyone. I mean, also in social life, you know, or in any arena, suppose, you know, whatever you're trying to learn how to throw a pot or lick an envelope, you know, when you're 6, you need someone who's done it to show you how to do it. One of the terrible costs of ageism is that it does segregate us, you know, in this way. I like Chip Conley. If you've read his book Wisdom at Work, came to a job at Airbnb with enormous experience as a hotelier, but no experience whatsoever in how, you know, online housing rentals would work. And he called himself a mentern, meaning part mentor, part intern. I think it's tremendously important to point out that skills flow both directions, that we older people do have more experience. It's made some of us wise, some of us not so much. But we also, you know, stand to learn and benefit from the young people around us. So it's not just a one-way flow of experience, it's two-way, and it's socially and materially and psychologically and emotionally enriching.
So you did a great list here to overcome the ageist and baseless stereotypes that stunt workers' prospects, older workers' prospects. So if we can just really quickly tick through them here. Number 1, cannot master new skills.
I heard a podcast where it says old dogs can't learn new tricks. It was like, yes, even old dogs can learn new tricks, and certainly humans can. Of course we can learn new things. I mean, if you told me that I had to master nuclear, you know, fission in order to support my kids, I'd figure out nuclear fission. I mean, we can and do learn new things. Especially if the new skill is attached to something we learned earlier in life, we learn quicker. But the evidence is everywhere around us. Especially when there's motivation. Of course we can learn. I mean, we now know, to put it in geeky terms, that the brain is plastic, meaning malleable, and it grows and changes lifelong. It doesn't stop when you're 20 or 30.
And by the way, when you said that about nuclear fission, it struck me that I've actually heard that argument before. Oh, you know, this is the new world. And of course, the boomer generation has probably been the most adaptive generation that's ever existed on Earth. And
Probably.
we may not be tech natives, but we invented it, but we've gone through all of these changes.
Right. And there's always some new thing. You know, kids, 10-year-olds now use different social media apps than their 15-year-old siblings. So of course the leap to digital is a quantum change in how humans relate. But hello, you know, I am not technically adept. I'm a bit of a technophobe. I don't like that about myself, and I don't much like admitting it. But I have, you know, figured out how to open a Zoom window and how to have a presence on social media, because without it, I would have no work.
And secondly, when I hear these absurd characterizations like, have you, you know, working at a nuclear power plant, I'm not going to be hiring Ashton Applewhite to be at a nuclear power plant. I'm going to be hiring you.
Because I'm so old?
No, because of the skill sets and the talents that you have, irrespective of your age. Is that, did I do well? Okay.
Right. And I would like some of the people at the nuclear power plant to have tons of experience, and I'd like some young whizzes right out of school. I'd like a combo, thank you very much, to keep my local nuclear power plant from going boom.
Second point, older people aren't creative.
It's absurd. There's no look at Louis Bourgeois, look at Pablo Casals, look at all the artists like Matisse who flowered in late life. No evidence for it.
And in fact, many people, including myself, will say, I'm just now getting the hang of this. You know, I've had the years to get experience.
Right. Or I had to do a job that was not that compelling, you know, in order to pay the bills. Now I can work fewer hours a week. Wow, I am now exploring my creative potential. A million stories like that. We don't have to stick with the famous artists. You're absolutely right.
And by the way, I want to throw in, somebody just sent this to me. It was an article in Engineering Systems magazine from
I can't believe I missed it.
I know. I was like, okay, but kudos to them. It was Dr. Stephanie Taylor, who's both not only a physician, but has a degree in architecture. Wow. And the point of it was that data shows that the aging brain is more capable of creativity and innovation than its younger counterpart. Psychologists, neurophysiologists specializing in the cognition of aging have identified two remarkable coexisting components that allow for this unprecedented creativity. These two components are long-term memories and experiences,
Right.
the ability to rapidly connect far-ranging associations. And imaging studies show that older brains are actually more distractible and disinhibited than younger brains, a trait that is directly linked to creativity.
We also know there's a pioneering I think he was a neuroscientist named Gene Cohen who did, he has since died, but he talked about the older brain. There's evidence that we draw on both hemispheres more than we do when we're young, and he talked about it as a kind of four-wheel drive. One cognitive decline is not inevitable by any means. About 20% of the population escapes it entirely. Think about it. You know, some of these really sharp 80 and 90-year-olds. Most of us do lose some slowing down in processing speeds and remembering the name of that movie you saw with what's her name. But the one reason for that is that there is more data in our brains. That finding came out of data scientists at the University of Tübingen. They weren't even intentionally looking at oldness. And so, we do, and obviously we have spent more time dealing with people. You get a better sense of how people work, what might not be a great move. I mean, my partner's a little older than me, and I had to get a business email off, and he had to tell me 3 times this weekend, like, you don't need to send it this minute, think about it a little longer. And I would be like, oh, right. And, I'm glad I'm glad he had the wisdom to tell me that. And I'm glad I was just barely smart enough to listen.
Well, and by the way, part of your book, and a great reason to read it, is that for me, it wasn't just validating, it was a relief. And one of the seemingly silly ones was, well, no, this is actually from your TED Talk, but I use it in my head all the time.
I'm glad.
When you talk about, I couldn't find my keys, I had a senior moment. Well, yes, I remember losing my keys when I was 22 years old. And as you said, I didn't call it, a junior moment.
Exactly.
But we do, and I just get wrapped up in thought more.
We do. We because we live in a world that saturates us with negative messages about getting older and none of the positives. We tend to blame things on age when age, in the vast, vast, vast majority of cases, has nothing to do with it. I'm too old to fill in the blank, wear that outfit, date that person, get that haircut, try for that job. You may be too smart. You may be too lazy. You may be too out of shape. You may be whatever, but age is not the reason. I mean, it's another line from the TED Talk, and it's the junior moment line is mine. This is just an old gag, but it's so good. I stopped blaming my sore knee on being 67 because my other knee doesn't hurt and it's just as old. We blame stuff on age, and we do get aches and pains. That shit is real. It sucks. But that is your knee may hurt, but it may also hurt because you knelt down gardening. So question this reflex. We all have no judgment to blame things on age when age may not have anything to do with it. When I see a young person who can't remember the name of the movie, a part of me, and this is ageist of me, goes, aha, see, they can't remember things either. That's not a helpful impulse or a constructive one, but it is a reminder of this reflex we have because of the way we are brainwashed from birth. And what I want to do is I can't unbrainwash people. Only you can unbrainwash yourself. And it means looking at your own age bias, and that is uncomfortable.
Well, and
once you do it,
I certainly have age bias. And by the way, the next point that you make, can't handle stress. And the businesses I've been in, I couple stress with endurance. And, I do often think with many millennials that I've worked with that I've been grateful to work with, they bring a lot to the table. I embrace it. I need it. But sometimes I'm like, man, I can outwork you under the table. I can out endure you. I can out problem solve you. But that is ageist on my part. But your next point is that
it's only ageist if you're saying you represent everyone your age and everyone your age does X or Y better or worse. It's not ageist if you are measuring your own capacity against a person's. That's real. Age is real, and your abilities compared to this other person, it's a legitimate comparison. You know, you have luck, I have luck. On my side, you know, we are white. We are, I suspect, pretty privileged. You know, people say, how do you have the energy? I still feel like I have certainly more, as much mental energy as I did. And I still feel pretty physically energetic, but you know, I could get sick tomorrow. I could break my leg tomorrow. It's important not to frame it in, and give an age is better than another. You probably are a lot better at focusing and allocating your resources than someone who is just starting out in a field or a job.
I learned. But your next point to respond to, please, is can't handle stress, that older people can't handle stress.
We've discovered Xanax.
Oh, so that's the secret.
Now, there, you're gonna have to bleep that out. Just kidding. You know, I'm an anxious person, but I think I'm a little better at not sweating the small stuff. You know, but that's a highly individual thing. I think it's, you know, I think by now you say, oh, this is really, you know, worrisome or makes you sad or whatever, but you have lived through more episodes that spark the same feelings. And hopefully you remember, you know, this is terrible, but it's going to look better. And I've solved problems like this before, and we're going to figure it out.
And by the way, I like that. And I find that so true, that when I get scared or worried about something, it's like, Paul, you've done this before. You've worked your way. You've been in darker places and you've worked your way out. So that's very
deep breath,
strong.
still feels terrible, but there's more to draw on. I mean, back to the both sides of the story thing, you know, there are real losses associated with aging. What we never hear about is all the gains that it is a process of accretion and addition and enrichment in addition to the losses, right? And one of the things we gain is perspective, confidence, self-awareness, long view. That is super helpful in your personal life, in your life as a parent, and as well as your life in the workforce.
Another misconception about older employees, that they slow things down.
Well, I guess when we were all on the farm baling hay, that might have been true, but there is no data for it. There's no data. I had a friend who had a wonderful shrink, and when she would say something totally wacky, like, you know, I'm a useless person, or I'll never find love, or whatever, her shrink would snap, no data for that. And just like, you know, new topic, there's no data for that. It's not true.
Miss work because of illness.
If older people get sick or hurt themselves, they may take longer to recover, but older people hurt themselves less often. We work more carefully. We may work more slowly, but we make fewer mistakes. So this is a trade-off, you know, and we, you know, you and I don't know how old you are or how healthy you are, but, you know, I'm 67. I definitely have, I hope 2 more and certainly 1 more decade in which to work full tilt. And that's plan A. Life may get in the way. Luck plays a huge role here, but you know, we've got plenty of energy to do what we're going to do. We're both embarked on new ventures, and we're carrying them out, I think, better than we would have had we attempted it when we were young, which of course we couldn't have, because you wouldn't have known enough to know that this is what we wanted to do.
And did that, you know, you were talking about baling hay. You have in here, can't handle physically demanding tasks.
I think, I mean, back to the farm, how many tasks these days are physically demanding? Almost none, right? I mean, the 3 countries that I mentioned that have the highest rates of population aging are also advanced industrial countries where automation has gotten a bigger foothold. Is that the most wonderful thing for old people in the world, or the most terrifying? AI is going to change everything for all of us. It is a wonderful thing, since no one really wants to lift heavy boxes all day, or, you know, help older people healthcare. You know, you're moving people around. That is physically demanding work, whether you're 20 or whether you're 65, right? So won't it be fantastic if robots can do those things, if we put in a social support system that enables people to get the support and the financial support that we need across the lifespan, so that people don't end up out of work and hungry and depressed.
And by the way, in manufacturing, well, in the first place, doing a lot of work for the auto companies over the last few decades, I've seen the ergonomics of working on an assembly line change so that anyone of any age doesn't get hurt or worn out, but also too that a lot of the technologies in Industry 4.0 and advanced manufacturing are geared to keeping older
Yeah,
older workers, because it's not that they want them for the physical aspects of it, it's what they want from their
the
brains
experience.
and their
Yeah, there's a
experience.
famous experiment with an auto factory in Germany, might have been Daimler, not sure, but where they actually put ergonomic assists to help older workers, help them stand, help them sit, help them move, help with repetitive motion. You know, that's fantastic. It's not so fantastic if we have robots and we just throw workers away, but that is a problem that applies to workers of all ages, which is why we need to work against it, you know, as young and old together.
And the other point are burned out. And I'll add to that just this general sense that you're set in your ways, you're kind of done, you're not interested in change, the way we used to do it back in my day kind of
Yeah.
perception.
Yeah. Well, it turns out that it's older people are not less creative or less motivated. If you have done the same job for 35 years and you weren't all that crazy about it to begin with, indeed, you probably don't jump to put on your, you know, your work clothes every morning and go to think how you can, you know, solve this nut anew. Give that person a new challenge and they will approach it with every bit as much creativity and determination as a younger person. That is a structural workforce question. Do we, you know, how do we make a work trajectory that makes it possible for people to keep learning and being retrained? Does your employer offer training lifelong, which we are all going to require, whether we're 30 or 50 or 70, because in the olden days, a single skill set sustained you throughout your work life, which ended at 50, right? You died. Life expectancy in the US at the turn of the century was, I believe, 49, the turn into the 20th century was, I believe, 49 for men, really short. Now we have these longer lives. We need to, again, rethink it across the lifespan. But, you know, what a fantastic challenge. We have an amazing opportunity.
Now, you've been traveling all over the world, all over the country. You're certainly an expert in this field. What does it take, and on the different constituencies, if you will, on their part, to change this for the betterment of not just older people, but the economy, for business and things of that sort? What are the active, proactive steps that need to take place?
I am not a business expert. I am not a healthcare expert. I am an activist. We are never going to make the most of longer lives in any domain without a grassroots social movement to reframe the way we think about age and aging itself. An analogy I would make is think where we would be with regard to women's voice and position in the world without the women's movement, right? Because it woke people up to entrenched systems of discrimination between whether in your marriage, in your private life, or in workforce, getting harassed, not getting heard. That is why we need a grassroots movement to like the women's movement to wake us up to ageism and the damage it does and how we are complicit in it. And then I wrote my book and I speak to get people, all these like aha moments, like, oh, age is a criterion for diversity. Oh, age costs us this much. Oh, I love pointing out, if aging is so awful, how come no one wants to be any younger? So no one does. So my job is to plant those seeds and then encourage people to take that knowledge out into whatever domain matters to them, even if it's just to perhaps, not everyone is an activist. God knows life would be intolerable if the world were full of activists. But the very most important ask is to look inside your own head at your own attitudes towards age and aging, because we are all biased. Me too, no judgment. And these are new ideas to most of us, and we can't change and challenge bias unless we are aware of it. The cool thing is that once you see it in yourself, which is like, oh crap, I'm part of this, I'm complicit, then you start to see it in the world around you. That's what consciousness raising did in the women's movement. Women came together, shared stories, realized like, oh, it's not my fault because my boobs aren't big enough, or my husband doesn't make enough money, or I dress provocatively at the office. The problem is a collective one, a political one that we can come together and do something about. That is exactly where we need to go with aging, because the problem is not that somehow we allowed ourselves to get wrinkles or to look our age or didn't master whatever, social media chat platform Facebook released last night. The problem is that we exist in a society that discriminates against us on that basis. And we need to mobilize against it. The movement is happening. There is a website called oldschool.info. It is an online resource of free, vetted anti-ageism resources. Everything is free on it, but the books, right? If you look at the campaign section, it is growing fast. That is measurable, tangible evidence that a global movement to end ageism is underway. People, I hope, of course, other activists will emerge, and I'll have plenty of company of people doing what I'm doing. I'm seeing it happening already. But if all you do, and I'm putting giant air quotes around the all because it's a lot, is to look at your own bias and think about how you use the words old and young, for example. Or do you, have you ever sent one of those horrible birthday cards, for people over 40, which really, make fun of self-loathing? And would you ever send a card that mocked someone's skin color or who they slept with? Well, why is it okay to do it on the basis of age? Even if you just start to interrogate your assumptions about age, you will be down the road. And if you speak up about it or change your behaviors or your language, you are part of the change.
As you point out, and I've heard so many other people in this sector point out, is that some of the most ageist people who are out there are the older people themselves. In fact, as you said, that internalized stereotypes become self-fulfilling prophecies.
Yeah. And that, to me, the most compelling reason of all to mobilize against ageism will be, whether you love old people or hate old people, whether you think all of us around is the worst thing to happen to humanity or a potential incredible gift. And, again, it could go either way. No, not really. But, there are challenges. Is to look at the data that is amassed all the time about how attitudes towards aging affect how our minds and bodies function at the cellular level. It's usually framed in the media as people with more positive attitudes towards aging. I like to say people with fact rather than fear-based attitudes towards aging, because this is not happy talk. This is science. Live longer, walk faster, heal quicker, even from severe disability. There's a study out from Yale a year ago that shows that people who do not equate aging with, just disability and decline are less likely to get Alzheimer's, even if they have the gene that predisposes them to the disease. So one thing I say every time I have the chance is, why not a public health campaign against ageism? The World Health Organization is launching one this year. This is the World Health Organization, not the World Old People Organization. So whether or not you think it's a catastrophe that there are so many of us or not, educate yourself, because your fears are out of proportion to the reality, and they make you sick, and they may shorten your life. The recent study just came out in PLOS One, the leading social science journal. This was only 3 weeks old. 7 million people across 45 countries. I know it's the 45 countries. And they first study to look at both internalized ageism and structural discrimination, established that around the world, ageism shortens lives and sickens people. And it is, of course, the burden, as ever, is the bigger burden is borne by people with lower socioeconomic status, people who do not have the clear advantages that you and I do. So ageism is a global driver of inequality in late life around the world.
And the health impacts, I think you're correct. And I doubt there's a single viewer who can't say or think of a friend, a relative, a loved one who, once their purpose was gone, they just went into decline.
And we live in a society that tells us that old people should shuffle off stage. It is hard to maintain a sense of purpose in that environment, one of the studies I came across early on, and I cannot tell you how skeptical I was about all of this early on, was that they'd have a long-term study, no, a longitudinal study, where they watched the same cohort of people for decades. And some of the people who were completely sharp to the end had brains full of plaques and tangles, like Alzheimer's. They can't say you had it because we don't know enough about Alzheimer's, frankly. Another really good reason to start an anti-ageism campaign as a public health initiative. And they looked at what those people had in common, and it was a sense of purpose. So I like to point out that the biggest obstacle to having a sense of purpose in late life is an ageist culture between your ears and in the world. And also that a purpose can be writ small. We live in this, in a society that celebrates, achievement, celebrities, physical perfection, speed. It's not an age-friendly society. You do not have to want to end ageism. You do not have to want to cure cancer. Your purpose can be just to help a neighbor, watch a grandchild graduate from, middle school, whatever the hell it is, have better roses next summer. It does not need to be it can be whatever makes sense to you. It can be to, learn. I found myself thinking, I'll never learn to play an instrument. Now, I probably won't. I'm really busy and I'm not very musically talented, but I thought, wow, why not? I mean, I'm probably not going to make it to Carnegie Hall, but of course I could learn to pick up an instrument. And those repetitive learning things, like learning a language, that does forestall cognitive decline.
Well, and yes, the science shows the fact that when you learn new things, if you're a piano player, not learning a new song, but rather learning how to play the saxophone or any of these new things, the more you continue to learn, the healthier your brain's going to be.
Yeah, use it or lose it.
So with this concept of especially ageism or ageist attitudes amongst ourselves, the foundation to get beyond that is to be aware of quite frankly, the new reality. So you talked about the new 60. I mean, to me, it's a new reality of increased lifespan, but therefore increased health span, the way that the world is, the way that, quite frankly, it was boomers who rewrote the ability to start a business, in your garage or on your own, the technology that enables all of these things that have changed and are unique to this time in the extreme.
It's a crazy time to be alive.
So what is the new reality for those of us that are heading into 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s that enable us to think different and make things different for ourselves and others?
You're not going to like this answer, but the new reality is utterly unique. The stereotype that I most ardently dislike about older people is this crazy idea that old people are all alike. In fact, the longer we live, the more different from one another we become. The nerdy way to say it is heterogeneity is the defining characteristic of old age. I just wrote a blog post last week that says if I could put one fact into everyone's brain, send a little magic science fiction worm into your ear of everyone sleeping tonight, it would be to know that to age is to become more diverse. So each person's solution to some people, I have met people who say they've never encountered ageism. Maybe they don't need to do this work at all. I've encountered other people who blame everything on age and discrimination when they haven't done any work on themselves to see what role they might be playing in their circumstances. So it depends on how wealthy you are. It depends on how healthy you are. It depends on your social network. Lots of, some people don't want to work. Some people can afford to not work. Some, to me, one place I have to really check my bias is when people say, my same age friends are retiring, because they're past 65. And to me, the idea of just relaxing, assuming you can afford to, so we're already talking about a very privileged cohort, is just nutty. It's not something I've ever wanted to do, but I have to check my judgment and say, look, there is no right way to age. It's why one reason I so dislike the term successful aging, right? There's no right way to do it. If you want to sit on the porch bench and scratch your butt and read novels, and that makes you happy and you can afford it, more power to you, right? So I think it's really important that we acknowledge that.
But has at least the broad concept, certainly the presumption and assumption of retirement,
Obsolete.
stereotypical retirement, has that become obsolete?
Obsolete.
Why?
Obsolete. Because of all these huge trends. More people are living longer. We don't do physical labor anymore. More older people are staying in the job market longer, both because we want to and because we have to. Because work, especially for men, is often the prime place we have social connection, and that, it turns out, shocker, spoiler alert, is the thing that gives life meaning and that makes us happy we have these long lives. Because of these massive macroeconomic trends that are shaping what work means, what work looks like, the way work is distributed, the way with the work from home. I mean, coronavirus, right? It is creating the biggest work from home experiment in the world. That's going to change how old people work and how young people work. All these big things are affecting all of us. It's all up for grabs, but it's really, really important that, as you know, if I imagine that as an explosion or something, you know, with all this uncertainty, that we look at all the things at our disposal to create hopefully a better future, despite the rising tide of badness everywhere in the world, through a lens of age equality, through looking at each person, not whether you are, you know, ideally not black or white, not fat or thin, not straight or gay, not old or young, but what are you capable of? What are you interested in? And how can we hopefully find a place for each person that enables them to bring that to the table? I mean, it's a big ask, but it's essential.
I hate to wrap this up because I think we could go on for a long time, and I hope we have the opportunity to do this again and maybe dive in a little deeper into some of these aspects.
So many ways in.
Start a list, okay? I'm going to start.
I wrote the book. You keep the list.
Okay, all right. Believe me, I've already got it. I've got it. Okay, so first of all, how can people get in touch with you? How can people follow you?
Well, I did write a book. I didn't want to write another book. Writing a book is evil, but every smart thing I have come up with is in my book, which is called This Chair Rocks, a Manifesto Against Ageism. Paul will testify that it is fun to read.
It is. Okay, I'm going to jump in here. It is a very good read. It's astounding information. But as I alluded to earlier, it made me feel better when I read it. It actually made me feel better. And I can't believe how much I caught myself with some outdated attitudes. And, you know, I thought I was much better than that. So thank you. Personally,
that's the uncomfortable bit, but it's not about better or worser, of course. And that is the uncomfortable thing. But that is, of course, what I love to hear, because once you acknowledge that, you start seeing things differently. Would you agree?
Yes, absolutely you do.
You start
Even
seeing,
I have, and I'm like living and breathing this stuff. So yes, good job.
Right. You start to see how the way you think has been shaped by forces that are not friendly to us, right? And that, if you're me, gets you riled up, but whatever, it makes you feel better. It took me a long time to find my path with this. I've been on it now for almost, 13 years, 14 years. And that's because I can't count, not because I'm trying to make myself seem younger. And I remember saying at one point, you know, if all I get out of this is that I feel so much better about my own late life, that may have to be enough. And it's a lot. And then the evil little voice would say, yeah, but if you can't figure out how to get, you know, make a living off something that makes the baby boom feel better about getting older, you are an idiot. But that took a long time too. So if you don't want to buy the book, which is not free, you can download the introduction for free. My website is thischairrocks.com. This whole project started as a blog back in 2007, where I have been thinking out loud. It's searchable by topic, so you can graze there. Also links to all sorts of interviews and stuff I've done. There is it links to another blog that I have, which is called Yo, Is This Ageist?, which I modeled on an wonderful existing blog called Yo, Is This Racist?, which a guy started because we're uncomfortable talking about race. It's a Q&A thing. You could send in a picture or a question, and I'll try and rule in an entertaining but hopefully thoughtful way about whether or not it is. which it usually is, but not always. And then you can also follow me on social media. I am at This Chair Rocks on Twitter, which I have learned to love, words I never thought would come out of my mouth. Instagram, I have a This Chair Rocks Facebook page where I really try and post substantive stuff. And last but not least, and also you can find it on my homepage, is a link to Old School, which I created with two colleagues because movements need tools. We know from a meta study funded by the World Health Organization that interventions against ageism work. So, and I just got a big grant to develop it into a hub of movement building activities. So subscribe to my email, subscribe to the Old School email. We don't get it together to write you very often. We will never give it away or spam you, and it's easy to unsubscribe. How's that for like a lowball pitch?
I'm comfortable doing this. Okay, so finally, ultimately, your purpose. What kind of a difference, what kind of an impact are you trying to make with all of these efforts?
Age bias is it's so terrible for us. It's terrible for us as human beings. Like racism or xenophobia, because it divides us. And it is terrible for us at an individual level. It's bad for our health in ways that I've mentioned. It fills us with needless anxiety. The theory about why these older people with a less fearful attitude towards aging do better is that knowledge acts as a stress, as a buffer against stress, right? So inform yourself, take some steps to educate yourself about the way this prejudice works in the world. And, that is what I hope my work inspires us to do. And if individual people feel better, that's a wonderful thing to have done for people. If it enables us to join forces against ageism, and because aging is the single universal human experience, in my wildest rainbow unicorn dreams, if we could come together around age bias and go, oh, wait, this is how prejudice works, this is how dumb stereotyping of all sorts is, then that is a way in to looking at how all prejudice intersects and compounds it, and to use it as a way to really make this movement intersectional and work against all these forms of bias at the same time as we work to reduce age bias.
So the bottom line, it starts with each of us. What are our ageist presumptions, assumptions, and stereotypes? Or in conversations, how we can say, yeah, I know why you would say that, but here's what the reality is. In other words, how can we get past ageism so that we can move on and embrace this new reality and fully leverage it as individuals, as businesses, and as a society? If you're interested in more content like this, then please go to ProBoomer.com. Subscribe, it's free. Follow on Facebook, ProBoomer, or LinkedIn, Paul Long. And also, please be sure to share with others anything that you think is relevant or might be helpful to them. And be sure to give us your comments, constructive criticism, or things you would like to hear more about.
This has been a ProBoomer BOOMcast. Information, inspiration, insight, and advice from successful thought leaders to help you launch yourself and assure the years ahead are some of your best.